policy of India, opening new vistas for internationalization. We have with us a very, very eminent line of speakers. We have with us Professor P.B. Sharma, who will be joined by Dr. Gunjan Sanjeev in his presentation. The second presentation will be by Tanmay and Amit Dua, and the third presentation will be by Dr. Gaurav Raheja. I'll be introducing each and every speaker when I request them to give a presentation. But before that, I thought I'll share with you what National Education Policy talks about internationalization of higher education. You would all be aware that India got a new education policy in 2020, that is 29th of July 2020, the policy was released. And I feel that this is for the first time that we have a policy which has laid so much of emphasis on the internationalization of higher education. So for the first time, India is wanting to go in for internationalization in a big way. And the salient features which were included in the National Education Policy recommendations for promoting internationalization are: first, the Indian universities who want to go abroad for setting up their campuses in the fields where India is the leader, maybe it is yoga, Ayurveda, or any niche areas, they can now go and set up their campuses abroad. Top 100 universities of the world, they can come and set up their campuses in India. This we were waiting for a long, long time, that establishment and operations of foreign universities in India. Now, 100 top foreign universities based on the world ranking can come and set up their campuses in India, and Indian students will be having the privilege of studying in the foreign universities sitting in their homeland. This is very, very important because, as you all know, that the number of foreign students who are going out from India for studying abroad is something like 11 lakhs per annum. And the number of students who are coming to study in India is around 50,000 only. So there's a huge gap. We want more and more students to come to study in India. And now with the foreign universities in India, that numbers will increase, because the students will come not only for studying in Indian universities, but also in the campuses of the foreign universities, which will be in India. That is the second thing. Third thing, Indian universities and the foreign universities had been waiting for a very, very long time for offering joint degrees, dual degrees, twinning programs. So twinning programs were held earlier also, but joint degrees were not allowed. This policy gives a go ahead to offering joint degrees by Indian universities and foreign universities together. And again, that is a very, very welcome step. And now the credits earned in the Indian universities can be transferred to the foreign universities, and foreign university credits can be transferred to Indian degrees. And lastly, the policy also says that when there is although number of foreign students in India is small, but whatsoever the number is, still the uh, the universities which were hosting the foreign students, not all of them were having the international students office. Now the policy giving the attention to the finest details has also mentioned that the Indian universities who are wanting to host the foreign students should necessarily have a international students office. So I think NEP, when it is implemented in letter and spirit, it will give boost to the internationalization of higher education. Apart from that, at Association of Indian Universities, we are taking some initiatives to promote internationalization of higher education. For example, AIU, which is a body of about 860 universities, which includes around 17 foreign universities also. So this body is creating a network of international higher educators. So far in India, there was no network of international higher educators, and many of our universities who wanted to do internationalization were not able to do it because they didn't know whom to talk to, whom to collaborate with, how to initiate. So we are trying to build a network called Indian Network of International Higher Educators, where the universities will be able to share information with each other. There will be a lot of hand holding, sharing of knowledge, so that everybody can move together towards the internationalization. And second thing which we are doing at AIU is that we are making an AIU collaboration portal. In AIU collaboration portal, we are requesting all the Indian universities to indicate what are they good at. Good at means whatever are their best facilities, best departments, best centers where they are having good research work. I mean, they will also have to indicate the publications, patents, faculty, facilities in their centers, so that when a foreign university wants to collaborate with Indian university, they are able to see that which university is good in which specific subject area. So this will give a lot of, this will facilitate rather foreign universities to collaborate with Indian universities. And lastly, AIU is also easing out its equivalence policy. And so far, we were depending upon the duration of the study. Now we are depending upon the credits of the study, that how many credits are earned by the students abroad and in India. And a credit mapping is going on at present, so that the Indian students who earn foreign degrees are not put to a disadvantage. So all these initiatives AIU is taking, the ministry is taking, the NEP recommendations are there. So I'm sure there'll be a big boost to internationalization of higher education. And to discuss it further, we have many good experts with us. So we'll have first presentation on the topic implementing internationalization of higher education, in which it says think comprehensive. So this presentation is being made by Professor P.V. Sharma and Professor Gunjan M. Sanjeev. Professor P.V. Sharma is currently the Vice Chancellor of MET University, Gurgaon, and has been the founder Vice Chancellor of Delhi Technological University and Rajiv Gandhi University in Bhopal. He is a former professor of IIT Delhi and former president of Engineering Science Division of Indian Science Congress. Professor Sharma is currently the chairman of Ranking and Accreditation Committee of AIU, where he is talking to the people and deciding that how the ranking and accreditation can be improved further. And he has also been the past president of Association of Indian Universities. Professor Sharma holds a doctorate degree from the University of Birmingham, UK, and during his professional career spanning over 51 years, he has made a distinguished contribution to the field of higher education, engineering, and technology. He will be assisted by Professor Dr. Gunjan M. Sanjeev, who is Vice President of MET Education Group and Director, International Affairs, MET University, Haryana. She is a versatile institution builder, driving some of the strategic internationalization initiatives, setting up of international campuses, fostering international linkages globally, seeking international accreditations, and creating study abroad opportunities. She is also a regular contributor to publications such as Economic Times, India Today, Pi News, UK, and all. So what they will be talking about is that how institutions should build up their internationalization strategy in a comprehensive way. Means how, from the institutional perspective, how can you improve the internationalization of higher education? So should I transfer the rights to Gunjan? Gunjan, you are going to present, or Professor Sharma?
Would like to maybe begin the presentation, then I would invite him for maybe adding on his expert comments.
Okay, so I will pass on the presentation rights to Professor Gunjan. Here you go, Gunjan. Yes.
Okay.
Now you can present.
Yes.
Over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So thank you so much, Dr. Mittal, for setting the stage so well. I think you briefly covered all the aspects so well. So it is easy for us to now build it further. And thank you so much to DAD and AIU for giving us this great opportunity. We've always been excited about internationalization. And now with focused forums happening in this area, we are certainly very delighted and discuss it further. So I'll be joined by my co-presenter, Professor Dr. P.V. Sharma, towards the end of the presentation for sharing his remarks. So basically, if you see, it's a question that are you implementing internationalization? The answer is yes, then think comprehensive. So as also highlighted by Dr. Mittal, some of the highlights on internationalization that are brought out by NEP 2020 are that we have to promote India as a global study destination, where we are aiming that students across the world are coming to India and we are able to give them the best standard education that can be provided at any part of the world. Internationalization at home. That, if you see that internationalization is not one single activity, one single initiative. The objective is that internationalization at home is happening through a number of initiatives which are embedded or integrated into all steps of teaching and learning process in the higher education institutions. Academic and research collaborations. Of course, this is not new to us. Many of us in India, for many years, we have been into collaborations, but just that NEP 2020 has given it the required impetus, to build it further, stronger, and also scale it to newer heights. Credit recognition, yes, credits earlier, there was always a problem that students going abroad. There was a challenge in recognizing those credits towards the main degree, but now this is possible. I'll be touching upon each of these points again, as I move on to in my presentation. Foreign universities can now set up campuses in India, of course. There's an impetus on the stay-at-home initiative. As Dr. Mittal pointed out, there are lakhs and lakhs of students moving out of the country every year. So now the objective is to bring the world-class education in the country so that students remain within the country and can get the world-class education right within the country. Also, a very, very important area, is that international offices have to be set up in each of the higher education institution. Many of the university already had it, but then since now it is a direction, especially with the recent guidelines that the UGC has not brought out, it is almost mandatory that every institution should be having so as to facilitate internationalization. And also high-performing Indian universities can be setting up campuses abroad. So the next important question is that how do we really build it? Because if you just look at sporadically or randomly, it may be very difficult to embed and integrate it very well into a structure. So here we are suggesting that how do you really implement and build it into your systems? So here is a model of comprehensive internationalization, which is built upon 6 parameters. And these 6 parameters are the articulated institutional commitment, collaboration and partnerships, administrative leadership, structure and staffing, curriculum, co-curriculum learning outcomes, policies and practices, and student mobility. Okay, so if we are able to embed all the internationalization into each of the parameters, we can really very well comprehend and implement internationalization into our teaching and learning mechanisms. So the first one I'll quickly touch upon is the articulated institutional commitment. What does it really mean? Okay, it means that the emphasis on internationalization should be following from the top leadership. So it is not about a separate office that is going to manage internationalization. No, it is not just a middle management staff level person can do that, but the emphasis of importance of having internationalization has to flow from the top leadership. It has to be articulated, document into the mission statements, strategy plans. Internationalization plans have to be are done up properly so that there is more focus and more accountability towards the end of the year when you're reflecting on your performance. You know that it was written, it was articulated, so that you have a focused approach towards achieving the same. For example, at Amity, we have 3 pillars for everything. We look at academic excellence, industrial integration, and internationalization. In the international context, I just took an example of Duke University. Now, how do they define their institution is described by 6 parameters, 6 themes. Out of that, if you see the 4th one, internationalization is also captured very well into the theme. The next one is collaboration and partnerships. We all know that partnerships will work if they offer a win-win proposition. So I would now like to talk about 3 categories what we can look at. The first one is very obvious when we think about collaboration with foreign universities, we think of universities, organizations, governments abroad. But the second one is also very important, which is local and community collaboration, which means there's certain bodies, right within the country. For example, DAD is one, British Council is one, American Center, embassies. They're all international bodies within the country. So it is very important that each of the campuses here in India also, within the country, you can establish relationships, forge associations, which could really internationalize your current applications. Internal institution network. So this is something which is very much near to us within the campus, within the institution. For example, every campus may have an international student population, or they may have foreign languages school, or they may have certain centers, for example, foreign studies, BRIC studies. All these are components of internationalization that have to be weeded together, they have to be knitted together so as to get the best from all these stakeholders. So I'll also try to highlight that what are the NEP 2020 embedding into these parameters, and what are the opportunities for the partners, so many foreign audience, for joining us from across the world. So NEP 2020 talks about research teaching collaborations and faculty-student exchanges with high quality for institutions, of course. So it's a great opportunity for all countries, who are right now listening to this presentation. Yes, there's a great demand, there's a great need, and we look forward to welcoming you all on behalf of all the universities that please come. And yes, we would love to have more exchanges for faculty, students, and also for research and teaching collaborations. Now that the credits acquired in foreign universities are permitted, of course, it gives the much required impetus to the growth in kind of opportunities that students are looking, from these kind of programs. We have several partners over, so it's not just about Amity. I'm also representing the Indian industry, that many of us have already partnered. So much was happening all these years, but now, of course, with NEP 2020, we can do much more. These are the pictures of delegations visiting us, meeting faculty. Now here, friends, I would like to say that the virtual is, of course, made it easier for us to, speak over the screens or through the virtual connect, but not to miss out the importance of, meeting face-to-face or visiting the campuses, because this creates a long-lasting memory and long-lasting impressions. So I seriously say that we are very high on it, and I would seriously urge that while MOU or emails is possible, but that is just another piece of paper. Please make it a point whenever possible, whenever things get better, do visit campuses and also practically engage with faculty and students at these institutions. The next one is administrative leadership structure and staffing. How do you really staff it? How do you really structure it? This international affairs function, I should say. So active involvement from the senior leaders, of course, vice chancellors, presidents, in case of foreign universities, all have to be involved. A committee or a task force can be established. So if you have, for example, at Amity, there are 18 institutions. So every institution can have one faculty rep, who's driving this agenda, along with a senior international officer. So that could also give it the required focus. International leadership, a senior official, not a non-academic, an academic person who understands everything, because internationalization is not just about only academics or only the other extracurricular activities. Has to be done at every level. So a senior officer has to be dedicated to the cause. NEP 2020 is already, we have discussed that it is mandated, or it may be suggested that an international office has to be set up at each of the institution. So you can be rest assured when your students are coming to India, to our campuses, they'll be taken really care of, because now you have a dedicated cell that is taking care of this. Curriculum, co-curriculum, and learning outcomes. Course is something very integral. So what basically idea is that whatever is the courses, the discipline that you offer, please bring that internationalized component. It could be talking about global practices. It could be talking about the pedagogy, that can really encourage, the international students to participate in the classroom very well. Focus on foreign languages, global studies, international programs is another great idea that we could explore. As we were discussing, that twinning programs are now possible where we could do joint programs. Also, I would like to highlight that India has some very focused areas, the niche areas like yoga, philosophy, Ayurveda, health, Sanskrit, Vastu Shastra, where the foreign universities can use this component to internationalize their programs. Okay, if you can integrate these components into your programs, you could also create a joint program, with Indian universities, which should also create a big opportunity for the foreign universities. And of course, not to miss that, the students are most welcome to come to India and study these niche courses where India can offer you the best across the world in these areas. Technology, yes, COVID has taught us technology and how to use technology, but yes, at the same time, I would like to say that there are structured models that are being used around technology, which could really facilitate learning across borders, and collaborative online international learning is one of them. COIL, we're also in touch with our partners to implementing COIL to do some joint programs. Faculty policies and practices. Okay, this is an important area, because when you talk about internationalization, if you're really talking about student inward mobility and outward mobility, it is also about bringing to the culture. So we can't keep faculty separate, right? Faculty should also be encouraged on all those things. So you can always see that faculty promotion and hiring policies can be built up around, giving consideration to the international work experience. So in Wagner College in the US, for example, the announcement of faculty recruitment, they include that people from the diverse and internationalized experienced candidates would be probably more welcome. Okay, they would be welcome. So such kind of things should be imbibed into our process as well. Faculty mobility and on-campus professional development should be given priority. So Fulbright, of course, and there are many organizations, which are helping towards this. Externally hosted training programs should also be encouraged. Platforms for faculty to exchange ideas. As we said, it's not just about collaboration between institutions. There could also be collaboration between faculty and faculty, even if an MOU is not signed between two universities. So a lot of ideas that we keep doing here. And of course, I'm sure many universities also in India are doing that. We have on-site faculty development workshops. Online also, we did a lot of webinars. We also picture of Professor Tarun Khanna from Harvard University was with us recently to interact with the faculty and students. So several activities, routine, online, offline, should be done to encourage these things. And last but not the least, an important point on student mobility. Student mobility, yes, it has to be improved both for inward and outward. I think a lot of has been said by Dr. Mittal also on the outward mobility and how we have to encourage inward mobility. Credit transfer policies are going to go a long, long way with all these in place. I'm sure now acceptance of credit should be higher. And so this encourages student outward mobility, and for inward mobility also we have to.
You have to finish now.
Just last slide. Offering scholarships to students to enhance mobility. Some pictures of how our partner university and TQ University funded a full 1-week program for our students and faculty through a scholarship program like this. And so create support infrastructure by means of an international office, and so that we are able to promote the study media initiative that is very ably being brought out by the government of India. So an international office, of course, is going to play a pivotal role in this. And these are pictures of our students here. Before I close, I would like to request Dr. P.V. Sharma to present his expert comments, please. Thank you so much for hearing.
Dr. Gunjan has already presented a comprehensive view about how do we go about implementing NEP 2020 and strengthen the call of internationalization. It would suffice me to say that apart from autonomy and flexibility, the major focus of NEP is on industry integration and internationalization. And in this new age of learning in which we all have entered now, it is far more easier today to collaborate and cooperate and enhance learning in our each other's university, mobilize student community from one nation to another, both physically or online as the case may be, and work out really avenues by which we would be able to strengthen the world of learning. But apart from learning, I think another area which NEP would like very much to focus is strengthening our research and innovation cooperation for a win-win situation for the two sides. For a very long time, the industries have been cooperating across the board globally, but educational institutions were waiting for an instrument like NEP 2020 to be in place. The government of the day fully understands this, and I was part of the task force of UGC, wherein we had put together, in fact, a document how to go about implementing NEP 2020, specifically in respect of internationalization. And we are of the firm view that with the enabling environment being created by NEP 2020, tomorrow it would be possible for us to not only strengthen the world of learning and world of research and cooperation, but also to ensure that high quality education is available to great many people across the world and at an affordable cost. And we in Amity are very much conscious about this, and that is why the Amity Future Academy is looking into how to put together this benefit for a larger spectrum of our own students here, as well as for very large number of international students who may be looking towards India for affordable, high quality education in institutions of repute. And I'm sure AIU, with its enabling portal for cooperation between universities of India with the universities abroad, especially, I must not hesitate to mention that in respect of Germany, one of the greatest advantage we are looking towards is how to strengthen the skilling of our students in respect of tomorrow's world in which they would work. Tomorrow we would require highly innovative and enterprising minds of graduates rolling out of the university, and I'm sure there is a lot to learn from the German universities in this respect. So we look towards much greater cooperation and collaboration in the years to come, and I thank the AIU for giving this opportunity for making a presentation on behalf of Amity University, Gurgaon. Thank you so much, Dr. Gunjan. Thank you, Dr. Mittal. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sharma, and thank you, Dr. Gunjan, for making a very, very comprehensive presentation and giving 6 parameters which are used by MET to promote internationalization. And I know that MET is doing internationalization in a big way, and it has many, many international students on its campus. So many, many congratulations for that, and thanks for the excellent presentation. We'll move on because the time is less. We'll move on to the next speaker. And the next speaker will be talking about the leveraging to NEP to foster deeper academic ties with German universities in terms of increased exchange programs and joint research programs. And here I would also like to mention that if you talk in terms of number of German students in India and the number of Indian students in Germany, the number of students to India last year was about 38, and the number of Indian students who are going to Germany last year, more than 20,000 students went to Germany from India. So the exchange is already taking place, but of course there is a scope for better exchange. So for this presentation, we have with us Dr. Tanmay Mahapatra and Dr. Amit Dua. Dr. Tanmay Mahapatra is currently working as assistant professor at BITS Pilani. Before this, he worked as a postdoctoral researcher at Technical University of Munich. His research interests include model-driven software development for big data systems and programming tools for data analytics. He has extensive exposure to German academic and research environment. We also have with us the co-presenter, Dr. Amit Dua, who is an assistant professor in computer science department again at BITS Pilani. He has been actively involved in solving the practical problems for e-waste management, smart grid, healthcare, security, and transportation systems using technology. He is the co-founder and CEO of Yushu Excellence Technology Private Limited. As a researcher, he has published over 50 publications in international venues, and he has also filed an Indian patent for developing the machine learning solution to detect cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. Over to you for your presentation. Just tell me that who is going to present so that I can pass on the rights to him, Dr. Dua or Dr. Mahapatra.
I will be presenting.
Sorry?
I will be presenting. Amit Dua.
Okay, so you have the right now, Dr. Dua, you can proceed.
Well, I request Professor Tanmay to share it because I'm not able to share it currently.
So if you are not able to share, then Amit, you have to pass on the rights because you have the rights now.
Yes. So can you share the screen? Yes, good evening to everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah. So in this session, we'll be presenting for the discussion of internationalization of our curriculum. The NEP provides various features, including the true experience of freedom and flexibility. It also permits the students for cross training and diverse domains experience. Theoretically, there are a lot more things specified in my discussion and followed by the discussion by Dr. Tanmay. We are presenting further with the roadmap and the clear guidelines and the details by which we can implement a few of these features so that the things which are specified as a roadmap are also detailed and they're also presented, and crisp implementation can also be done for these plannings. Specifically, we will talk about various aspects where it is also more important for internationalization to make it very clear how we are implementing. My discussion will primarily be talking about ABC, which is academic bank of credits, and the later on Dr. Tanmay's discussion will primarily further with the other cross-domain skills and internationalization. Can you move to the next slide, please? In the academic bank of credits, we necessarily mean that a student is allowed to work from any university and to get any particular course The primary agenda initially has been that in a particular year, the student can work for a university, get the credit for those courses that he or she has done. At a point of time, whenever he or she wants to move to other universities, that credit can be utilized further for making sure that his graduation or post-graduation degree or whatever course that particular student is properly carried further with. Now here the idea or the clear guideline which BITS Pilani has been implementing and has been implemented in various IITs, NITs specifically, and also in German universities, but as a very sparing way or as a disparate manner in their own universities. One of the important aspects has been the fact that there is a fixed credit for every particular course, and there are variable credits which we call as electives, and which the student has a flexibility to choose. Currently, the flexibility is limited to the courses that have been offered in the universities and not otherwise. And also the flexibility is in terms of what the student can take that has been offered. The courses even that are fixed and certain for a particular course, for example, if the student is doing a bachelor's in computer science, that particular course algorithms has a particular expectation from the students. The same expectations or more or less similar expectations are there from the graduate students who are doing algorithm course from IITs or NITs or BITS or any other particular university for that matter. Now the idea here has to be that a particular tagging has to be there where the course, let's say algorithm or in a psychology or any particular university, has a particular tag and has a particular prerequisites or post requisites that if a student has done this course, he should, before enrolling, must have done particular so and so prerequisite. After doing this course, must be capable in those particular aspects, at least must have studied those particular topics. Once the tagging is done, the student is allowed and must have the flexibility to choose the particular course from wherever university or the academic institution he prefers. This is one form of flexibility. The other form of flexibility in the number of courses or the specialization the student prefers to have or wants to have in the area of multiple disciplinary activities, and where we know that as a faculty member, the student who is more aware of different disciplines, he is more aware to implement the solutions of his knowledge in that particular area in a better manner. So as a computer science student or as a mechanical student or as a pharmacy or as a psychology student, if the student is primarily majoring or has a degree in computer science and wants to use his particular free credits that are generally called as electives or optional courses, he may be allowed or he should be allowed to choose these credits either from psychology or biology or from mechanical or from any particular area of his or her particular interest, not only from that particular university but from abroad as well. For that particular point onwards, the tagging is very important. Even we go further and allow the students to implement his or her skills in terms of either research or in terms of his implementation in either industry or in other research labs as well. To give a small idea, if a student has to acquire 120 units of credit in the entire span of 4 years or 3 years of his graduation degree, 70 or 68 units are reserved to be fixed, and rest 50 or 52 units are variable. They are called electives. These 52 units the student should be allowed to take from any particular university and from any particular discipline that he is allowed. At the same time, the student should be allowed implement his or her particular skills in the research lab or industry that can also be given a pre-defined notion or predefined credits that the student is allowed to have. Once the tagging is done, the universities and the faculty members and the students have a lot of more flexibility to choose from various other options, so that we are fulfilling the purpose of the education, where the student is more having the option of implementing his knowledge for solving problem. That also solves the internationalization as well. Once the tagging is done at a national level, the tagging can be made international as well, where the students can go abroad or the foreign students can come to India for taking those particular credits for that particular course or for research or particular industry. Over to you, Tanmay sir.
Okay, so I would like to build on the points which Dr. Dua has already talked about. So as you can already see that these points are not what our university has done, but this is more about what can be done to exploit all the facilities which is provided by the NEP. So building on the first 3 points which Dr. Dua has already explained about, and from my experience where I studied in Rheinisch-Westfälische Technische Hochschule, and I also did my PhD at TU Munich. I know that the German universities, the semester system is quite flexible. So to exploit the NEP framework and to allow students to go to foreign universities for one specific semester or maybe just to do an internship, we need to come up with this concept of semester break. So as Pankaj ma'am was already saying that now the NEP framework is more concerned about credits and not about the duration. So based on that, we can support the concept of semester break, where a student can take one semester off, can move to a foreign university, maybe just to do an internship in some industry, or maybe take 2 or 3 courses in a foreign university. And with the support of the flexible credit system, we can still accommodate those additional credits, and they can still be reflected in his transcript. Now, on top of this, we can also have the concept of a bi-yearly academic fair. This is mostly for researchers and faculties working in both the countries, where they can showcase what they have done, and maybe if they find out something interesting, then they can talk about how to send some master thesis student or bachelor thesis student, or maybe even discuss about joint research ventures. And to add to that, we can also have the concept of online portal, where researchers specifically from both the countries, they can be well connected and they can stay in touch with each other, like what kind of work they are doing and what is the research area they are currently focusing on. And with this, we can also see a little bit improved research funding, both from the DFG and DST side for joint research ventures between universities of both the countries. And the last is how to handle diversity. So one of the core points of NEP is to allow students to learn in their regional language. Now we can take this point to an international level, and if any student studying in any Indian university wishes to pursue a course of 5 credits or 6 credits from a German university, which is probably offered in German language, then we need some mechanism how to find out the equivalence of such courses and still allow the student to take such courses. And we believe that these points, these guidelines will actually help to concretely implement the NEP framework, and this will benefit the students and researchers working in universities of both the countries. This is our opinion. So this is our presentation, and if there are any questions, we'll be very happy to discuss.
Thank you, Amit, and thank you, Tanmay, and thanks for sticking to the time. And I also feel that ABC is the most innovative concept of national education policy, because it gives a lot of flexibility to the students in terms of choosing the courses, in terms of choosing the institutions, in terms of the time span during which he wants to pursue those courses. So it's a very, very innovative concept, and this is definitely boost internationalization if the students are allowed to do courses partly from India and partly from foreign universities. So thank you very much for a very, very beautiful presentation. Questions we'll take in the end, because after all the 3 presentations are over, we'll be taking up the questions. So let me move on to the last presentation of the day. We have Dr. Gaurav Raheja with us, and he'll be talking on internationalization through the lens of NEP. So NEP, of course, NEP is doing a lot to promote internationalization. So he'll be talking about internationalization through the lens of NEP. And Dr. Gaurav Raheja is a professor and head of the Department of Architecture and Planning at IIT Roorkee. He is well-known design thinker and an invited speaker in the domain of universal design and social inclusion. He is a DAD research ambassador and a visiting professor to various German universities. He is an advocate for inclusive education and currently chairperson for a UGC committee on developing guidelines for accessibility and inclusive higher education. He has also been an advisor to the Accessible India campaign launched by the Honorable Prime Minister of India, and is also consultant to various prestigious departments of the Government of India. He'll be talking about the new paradigms of internationalization of Indian education, of foreign education from Indian perspective. And he'll talk about 3 I's. Now, what are these 3 I's? Let us hear from Gaurav. Gaurav, we are 3 I's.
Thank you, Dr. Mittal, for a very kind introduction. Just checking. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, you are.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, fine. So, okay, fine. I think I've been shared the slides. I will.
Yes.
Here we go. I hope the slides are visible.
Yes, they are visible.
Okay, great. So, good evening, everyone.
Yes.
Dr. Mittal, for a very warm introduction, and thanks to DA creating this whole backdrop for us to come together. I know the time is. This moment is actually more about interpreting because the policy out, but I think I look at NEP while one phrase is policy. I would say this is also the paradigm in one way or the other, because it lays before us immense time. I think India must come together to look at actually coming into our ambits so that we can look at our future international lens. And in light of that, there this entire presentation as internationalization through a, which primarily means is, can we re-magnify the whole idea of into our educational systems? Actually, it's not just level, it's also at a systemic level. And what are we really looking at it? So I think I've done it like 10 or 12 times. Every time I read new spark that it shows us, therefore it means is P can also stand for possibilities. It is about new education in which how we want to nurture the new generations in India. And I must we have been victims of a particular kind of education where the us from a certain disciplinary viewpoint. I mean, I come from an IT and we know what technology offers, but if you do not take sciences, almost like looked down upon. I hope internationalization brings us because NEP stresses upon something called as 64 kalas in which engineering and science also becomes important. Now, disclaimer here that this presentation is purely my own interpretation. Therefore, it's not really a professional view, but it's rather a personal view here.
Sorry to interrupt, Dr.
NEP
Raheja, but
here, I would say NEP
Dr.
direction.
Raheja,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. There's probably some internet issue from your end because your voice is breaking and even your video goes in between.
Okay, well, you can just let me know. If you want, I switch on to another system. I think it should be fine.
It is better. You can
Plan
continue.
otherwise. Okay, is this slide with? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Gaurav. I think if you can put off your video, if the connectivity issue is there, you can show the presentation.
I'll do that. I'll do that. Just a moment. Do you think this works?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, better.
Fine. So what I'm saying is actually provides us a way of looking at the entire education spectrum. Your destination that, okay, this is the NEP and this is the internationalization strategy. What does this paradigm actually offer? And I'm only trying to bring back certain and therefore propose a certain way of looking at it for internationalization as well. Take it further. The first question that it brings us back again is, why are we still talking about internationalization? Why do we still, and why does NEP bring out a particular section on internationalization? Only if I see, there are many dimensions to it, but if I pick only 2 or 3 broad, one is it must provide a wide variety of exposure, because if you do not in contemporary world, your education itself becomes a misfit. Viability and in terms of your quality of life. So it is about youth to be relevant to the global context, wherein I mixing the word global with local, right? So you have to make sense in the areas where you are or in the areas where you could be. One of the conversations with Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, who mentioned is the only survival kit for future. So I think internationalization is a very strong footing on that. We do not need any debate perhaps on it. That it brings back to India is, are we still locked in of self-esteem with reference to internationalization? Do we, a university in Harvard is much better than us, which kind of that we know nothing and everything only outside India happens is great. Notion also through NEP we could set right, perhaps by external mechanisms of education, wherein I think Dr. Gunjan and Dr. Mittal, whether you talk about yoga or whether you talk about computer science or artificial intelligence, any other discipline for that matter, I think India needs to invest a lot in bringing us at par with the best in the world. Without that kind of an investment, internationalization is only going to be a one-sided exchange and we'll still have the skewed. So, and of course, I think many years ago, Mahatma mentioned that no culture can live if it attempts to be exclusive. We are talking about how can we include a wider section of in order to make it more internationally competent. And here, if you see 2020 highlights, so I've brought in few slides which are actually in this gray background, highlights the keywords out of it. NEP lays very clear stress current shackle of a grid form of education. An engineer is an engineer. A doctor remains a doctor for a lifetime in India. Can we rethink about really hoping that the NEP allows and creates the framework the discourse to multidisciplinarity and enhance the enrollment? And this could perhaps happen by internationalization. As a second question is, what do we mean by internationalization? One is, why did we need it? Is what do we mean by it? I think we mean many things. Of course, as already in the previous presentation, it does not just mean academic collaboration. Level is maybe I would say a touristic statement where people travel to another through conferences, through short-term programs and get an idea outside, which looks at a broader understanding of where would you collaborate with what reasons. And then third is a level where you start talking shared knowledge. And fourth is when you start competing, when you start competing through research programs and through certain kind of innovation to actually show to the world globally using the tools of that what can you offer to the entire world, which is perhaps more than it was 20 years ago. So I think overall looking at it, I call this a spectrum of internationalization. The last is education, which I think India badly needs while the world has progressed immensely. Our debate is still about, which field. Unfortunately, in India, we find the funding is restricted to 2 or 3 bodies, whether it is a DST or maybe one ICSSR. Large part of fields remain unfunded and which kind of impair their development. What the NEP talks about is the NRF, National Research, opens those boxes and perhaps makes research and international truly in the sense of integrating education as a whole. In NEP 2020, it talks about 64 kalas or art. Not distinguish between science and social science, between vocational and, in fact, I must say, it's a very audacious attempt to use the word arts to define a word like science. It talks about even medicine as a form of art and carpentry as another. And I think this, to me, looks like a very big shift in the way education is received, but I think it still needs a lot of time provided direction to bring education to a holistic development. Otherwise, engineers who might turn to become robots but are no good for a human society. Produce social scientists who might not interface with any form of technology, also fall on the same line on the other side. And this cross exchange, which NEP talks about, I think this is where the academic, already highlighted by Dr. Dua, works in a very interesting. But yes, this will require various mechanisms which will be autonomous and consolidated at a standardized level, maybe by organizations like UGC. Can talk about what is the base of earning a credit and how can you allowing you transfer at a certain later stage of life. The third question, now how do you internationalize? So of course, we know about certain basic, Dr. Gunjan pointed about the 6 methods. So one of them is mobility. But I think I'm looking at it at 5 levels of methodologies in. And I think today we must look at talking about knowledge clusters, which talks about. So here I'm reminded of my trip to the Ruhr area of Germany. It is showcased as a knowledge cluster, both in terms of future technologies and in terms of pilot implementation at a city level. Second is developing online distance learning programs. I think India has made a big leap. The third is lifetime learning opportunities. I think a big question here is, can you at the age of 10 or 20, or can you learn it at the age of 35 year level? I think those opportunities have also opened up by new possibilities. In India, I think we have a long way through the NEP, these enablement, and which is further about now new tools of exchange. Now you don't need to actually earn a certificate and get the credits. You can get it right here. And we offer credits by making something worth within India. And I think Swayam on that side. But a very important point is the level 5, which is about autonomy. So I think Indian institutions have a lot to learn from international, provided we have programs to provide such an exposure, such the governance and autonomy is not mixed up into autocracy, becoming an enabling tool for the future generations to do this. And here that we still have is a debate of numbers versus quality of exchange. Millions of children to just go abroad and have a good time outside, and what do we really want to focus on? Quality of exchange with those numbers. Sometimes run contradictory, but that is where internationalization needs to look at, see what strategies do we want to follow. So looking at it future, I would say very clearly targets something, if I say in a next phase-wise manner of around 15 years, how do we contextualize those reforms around governance and financial robustness as well? And I think funding is a serious major issue. In the discipline that I represent, architecture, we face immense issues because architecture is defined by every funding agency in their own sweet wish. Somebody considers it as science, somebody considers it as art, somebody considers it as technology, somebody considers it as social science. And we eventually are left with many a times in a no man's land, while we might be doing something which is extremely relevant for an urban society. So here a question comes from in the NEP 2020, is about very clearly it mentions that even institutions such as IITs will move towards a holistic and multidisciplinary education with more arts and humanities. On the contrary, students of arts and humanities will aim to learn more science. And I think this is a pretty big shift. The question is, are we doing it? When will we do it? And how we will do it? Because this cannot happen unless the orientation of our funding programs is aligned to it. Otherwise, our students might again get into a bad mix of unemployability if this is not done with caution. So here is again the, I think, idea of academic bank of credits we've already talked about, wherein you're also talking about a minor degree, or I would say an undergrad degree with a research-based program. So if you look at it in a broad sense.
Also, please be first.
Yeah, I'll do that. If you look at broadly, who are the key stakeholders of a internationalization strategy? So you'll find one is a student and faculty, which is where most programs are actually guided. But here I would want to bring here is, it's the second level program, which is for the staff and the institutions, which also needs to open up and we need to co-create that. And the third level is for the regulatory bodies and the nation itself, which need that kind of an exposure to create internationalization with a whole mix of stakeholders that we're talking about. This brings me to a perspective of the 3 I's. So, you know, the I for internationalization needs the I, which is the EYE as a perspective. to understand this in three dimensions. The three dimensions that I talk about here are, one is interdisciplinarity as an approach, second is infrastructure as a means, and third is innovation as an outcome. Because we cannot achieve any of these things unless we really become flexible at all levels. And I think here I mean business at the level of infrastructure. You cannot get international students if we do not invest in infrastructure. If our institutions close at 5 p.m. and we have a very sacred structure of hierarchies, I don't think we would succeed in internationalization by not doing that. So if you look at it this way, I'm briefly just touching upon interdisciplinarity, talks about various other programs where we need to work upon. So these are basically directions in which I think our institutions need to look at interdisciplinarity. Where I would like to lay a lot of stress on is pedagogy. We might teach the same old content, but unless we have the new tools, here you see the NEP 2020 talks about the new pedagogy where communication, discussion, debate, research, and opportunities for interdisciplinary thinking needs to be focused. But do we have programs which is purely about interdisciplinarity exchange for pedagogic tools? I think that's a pretty serious area, but I don't think so far we've seen much happening on that. Likewise, you look at infrastructure. Are our universities ready for receiving internationalization? I think here is a big question, which is a litmus test. Have we moved on from a simple regular classroom to what is called as peer-centric learning spaces? Today, the time is gone when we talk about one professor teaching everything. It's about self-learning, collaborative learning, hybrid learning. And we need to look at infrastructure designs for that matter. Laboratories with concepts of 24/7, which I call it anytime learning. Number 4 is safety for infrastructure. Are our campuses safe, for example, for women, for international students? Do we provide well-being in terms of health? I think our campuses need to talk about if we want to really attract good talent from outside. Then is in which cities and in which locations are we creating new campuses? What is the connectivity and what are the data security issues that we have? And towards the end, it's about efficiency, because infrastructure for future does not mean buildings, but it talks about seamless experiences for everyone. So as NEP talks about the establishment of MERUs, I think it's important for us to talk about multidisciplinary research universities with certain guidelines for infrastructure. And I think we could play a very active role at that level. Then is last, in terms of innovation and impact, I think we are talking about the world is united today on the SDGs. It's not talking about subjects now any longer as artificial intelligence or data science, which are becoming seamless, but it's about which sustainable development goal is this particular dimension of your learning focusing on. So to illustrate that as an example, we have a running project. In fact, I'm an active partner of this.
Gaurav, we are running out of time. We just have 2 minutes.
Fine. I'll just wind up. So this is just one example where we are engaged with 40 countries while it was conceptualized with 5 major partners. And it leads to global impacts like, for example, institutions like Himalayan Institute of Alternative Learning, where internationalization is becoming a very relevant thing. So the question that we have is, can everyone be included is a question, or letting everyone be included are certain other things. And if you look at it this way, the I cube leads to the E cube, which is the education must be provided through an environment and ecosystem. And that's what we need to actually look at. So if I look at it this way, the I becomes a function of both these things. A quick glimpse of 175 years of our own legacy of education, which was established by the British. This is how our MOUs currently globally are. And this is the map and canvas in which we are expanding across the world through internationalization strategy at IIT Roorkee. These are some of the active programs that we have with Germany. And this is how the German landscape looks like. And I must acknowledge here a small funding which we got from DWIH and the DAD, which became a curtain raiser event for us in April 2019. And even that one event led to certain outfalls through which a lot of exchanges developed even after that, which I'm sure DAD would not know. But these are some glimpses of that how small collaborations and small events take us to that level. And to conclude my slide, I would say the entire NEP can be structured in these 2 words, which is co. We have to come together. Even come has COME, and it has to be a collective, collaborative, and cooperative learning. And with those words, I think I thank you all, and danke in German, for a very patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you very much. It's exactly 4:30. I'm not very sure whether we can take up some questions or not. Shikha, are you there?
Yes, yes, Dr. Mittal, I'm very much here. I do not see any question. You can go ahead. In case something comes, I will just let you know.
Okay, but the time is 4:30. Can
That is
we?
right.
Time is 4:30. Otherwise, I was thinking of asking many questions for the panelists, but because the next session will be getting delayed, so we will not be able to take up any questions. So thank you very much. Thanks to all the panelists for excellent contribution. Thanks for bringing up new ways of internationalization, why internationalization should be done, how it should be done, what constitutes internationalization, how a university can take up internationalization in a big way, how Academic Bank of Credit can promote internationalization. All the questions were answered by the panelists. So thank you very much to all the panelists, and thanks to DAD for holding this conference. I'm sure many Indian scholars, students, researchers, faculty members would be benefited out of it. And I must also say that we got so many proposals for presentation in these conferences, and you are the three ones who were the best, and that is why we shortlisted you all for the presentation. So congratulations for your selection also. And thank you very much, and over to Shikha.
Thank you, Dr. Mittal. I think you closed it in a very good note. Thank you very much. We selected, I think, the best out of a lot of proposals what we have got. And yeah, so we can end it here.
Okay, thank
In
you.
case
Gaurav,
there
you
is no
can pass
question, yeah.
the rights to Shikha.
So much, Dr. Pankaj Mittal. Thank you so much, Dr. Shikha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for joining, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation from BITS Pilani and IIT Roorkee. Such tall institutions are there in this panel. Such a great pleasure. We are so privileged and happy to be part of this.
Thank
I've
you.
put several comments in the chat box. Maybe some of them would be useful to you for preparing your summaries, etc. But I'm greatly enthusiastic that the meaning and purpose of education would be rediscovered by our efforts to come together, world as a family, trying to educate each other and understand the purpose of education is to ensure that not only we strengthen the economies, but live a blissful life of engagement up to the last breath. And I'm sure that's going to happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And a
Thank
request
you.
to all the panelists, as we had promised earlier, if all the three can share their presentation either with me or Shikha, then we can upload it on the AIU website and the DAD website so that the others can benefit out of it.
Exactly. Thank you. I'm sure many would like to have that presentation.
Yes. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Dr. Mittal.
Thank you.
Thank you.